Pull up a chair. No, closer than that. You need to feel the weight of what I'm about to tell you. People see me. They see the Motor Mafia patch. They see the scars and the ink, and they think they know what I'm about. They think it's all about the noise, the brotherhood, and the road. And, yeah, that's a big part of it. But there's a deeper level to this life. It's about being a shield. It's about standing in the gap when the world gets too cold for the people who can't fight back anymore. See, I've got a theory. You can tell everything you need to know about a man's soul by how he treats two things, the elderly and animals. Because neither of 'em can give you anything back. Neither of 'em has a voice in the halls of power. If you're cruel to a grandmother or you're mean to a dog, you aren't just a bad guy. You're a waste of oxygen. You're a stain on the pavement. And in my town, we don't like stains. Let me tell you about Arthur. Arthur is 87 years old. Now, don't let the age fool you. Back in the day, Arthur was a giant. He was the kind of man who could tear a transmission apart with his bare hands and put it back together in the dark. He was a master mechanic, a biker king. Long before I ever threw a leg over a saddle, he taught my old man how to tune a carburetor. He taught me how to listen to an engine to find the heartbeat. He's the foundation of this community. But 87 years takes its toll. The hands that used to lift engine blocks are gnarled with arthritis now. The legs that used to ride from coast to coast are slow and heavy. Arthur lives in that little blue house on Miller Street. It's a quiet place, with a porch that creaks in just the right way, and a garden that's seen better days, but still smells like home. Arthur's been alone for a while. His wife, Maggie, the kindest woman I ever knew, passed away 5 years back. His kids, they're scattered across the country, calling him on Christmas and birthdays, but mostly it's just Arthur and the silence. Except for Bess. Bess is a Jack Russell Terrier. She's not a big dog, but she's got a heart the size of a V, twin engine. She was the last gift Maggie ever gave him. She's a scrappy little thing, white with these perfect brown patches over her eyes, and she's smarter than most people I know. Bess wasn't just a pet to Arthur. She was his reason to wake up. She was the one who barked when the mailman came. She was the one who curled up on his feet at night, so he didn't feel the cold bed so much. She was the last living link to the life he'd built with Maggie. I'd see Em every morning. Arthur in his old flannel shirt, Bess on a weathered leather leash, walking down the sidewalk. Arthur walks slow, and Bess, she's patient. She'd wait for him, looking up with those big, soulful eyes as if to say, "Take your time, old man. I ain't going nowhere." It was beautiful. It was the kind of respect you don't see much of anymore. But then, the shadows started creeping in. We've got a new breed of trash in this city. These ain't outlaws. They ain't even criminals with a code. They're just thugs. Cowards who look for the easiest way to make a buck or feel powerful. They look for the softest targets. And last Tuesday, they found Arthur. Arthur was out in his front yard. He was kneeling down, trying to tend to his rose bushes. Bess was right there, off her leash, but never more than 3 feet away, chasing a grasshopper through the weeds. Arthur was focused on his work, humming an old tune, thinking he was safe in the neighborhood he'd lived in for 50 years. A beat-up silver sedan rolled up to the curb. It didn't belong there. It looked like a shark circling in shallow water. 2 punks hopped out. Young, maybe 20. Wearing hoodies and sneakers that cost more than their souls. They didn't look at Arthur. They didn't see the man who'd built this town. They just saw an old man who couldn't chase him, and they saw Bess. One of him, a skinny kid with a sneer that I'd love to wipe off his face, grabbed a net. He didn't even use his hands. He just threw a net over that poor little dog. Bess let out a yelp that I can still hear in my nightmares. A sharp, terrified scream that tore through the quiet afternoon air. Arthur looked up. He tried to stand, his old knees popping and cracking.
"Hey! What are you doing?"
he yelled. His voice was raspy, full of panic. The kid with the net just laughed. He scooped Bess up, net and all. The little dog was fighting, biting at the mesh, her eyes wide with terror. The other kid, the driver, stood there with a smirk on his face, holding the door open. "Get back, old man," the kid yelled at Arthur.
"Unless you want to join her."
Arthur didn't care about his own safety. He lunged forward. He tried to grab the kid's sleeve, but he stumbled. His foot caught on the edge of a garden stone, and he went down. Hard. He hit the dirt right in the middle of his roses. The thugs didn't even look back. They threw Bess into the back seat. I can only imagine what was going through her little head. The only person she'd ever loved was lying in the dirt, and these strangers were taking her away into the dark. The silver sedan peeled out, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of exhaust and the sound of an old man's heart breaking. Arthur didn't get up right away. He couldn't. He just lay there in the dirt, clutching a handful of Maggie's roses, screaming Bess's name until his voice gave out. I was at the clubhouse when the word came in. Jimmy from the diner called me, his voice shaking. When he told me what happened, the room went cold. I'm talking ice cold. 50 brothers were in that room, and you could hear a pin drop. Then, the sound of leather creaking, the sound of boots on the floor. Arthur is the king of Miller Street, and someone just stole his soul. They thought they picked an easy target. They thought they could snatch a dog and disappear into the night. They didn't realize that Bess is a Motor Mafia dog. They didn't realize that every single one of us would walk through fire to bring her back. And they sure as hell didn't realize that when you make an old man cry, you've just signed a contract with the Reaper. If you're sitting there right now and your blood is boiling as hot as mine, hit that like button. Don't you dare scroll past. Show me you've got a heart for Arthur and Bess. Drop a justice in the comments if you want to see what happens when the Motor Mafia goes hunting. Because the sun is going down and the hunt is on. I didn't just call a meeting. I didn't sit around and talk about it over a beer. When word hit the clubhouse that Arthur was lying in the dirt and Bess was gone, the air in the room didn't just get heavy, it turned into lead. Every brother there knew Arthur. He's the man who showed us that a bike isn't just a machine. It's a living thing that needs respect. And to see him treated like he was nothing. To see his only companion snatched away by 2 punks who probably couldn't even change their own oil. It was an insult to every one of us. I stood up, and I didn't have to say a word. 50 chairs pushed back at the same time. The sound of 50 kickstands snapping up was like a rhythmic drumbeat of war. We rolled out of the lot, not like a parade, but like a shadow. A long, dark ribbon of steel winding through the city streets. I led the pack straight to Miller Street. When we pulled up, the sight broke my heart. Arthur was sitting on his porch steps. He'd tried to wash the dirt off his face, but he'd missed a spot on his temple. He was just sitting there, staring at the empty spot on the rug where Bess usually waited for him. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in 2 hours. He looked finished. I hopped off my bike and walked up to him. I didn't offer a hollow. Sorry. I just put my hand on his shoulder. It felt like holding a bag of dry sticks. He was trembling that hard. "We're gonna find her, Arthur," I said. My voice was low, vibrating with a promise I knew I'd keep or die trying. Arthur looked up, his eyes glassy. Jax. They were so fast. She was so scared. I can still hear her yelping. "I know," I said. "And they're gonna hear us soon." I turned back to the brothers. "Spread out. I want every shop, every corner, every low-life snitch in this zip code talking. Someone saw a beat up silver sedan. Someone knows where those 2 cowards hide their heads. Find him." We spent the next 6 hours turning that city upside down. We weren't being polite. We were kicking in doors and rattling cages. We went to the chop shops. We went to the parks where the pushers hang out. Every time we found someone who looked like they knew something. Biggs would lean over M until they started sweating grease. Around midnight, a kid on a moped, one of the local messengers who knows the Motor Mafia doesn't forget a favor, caught up to me. He was out of breath. "Jax." Silver sedan. Dented rear quarter panel. It's parked behind the old warehouse district, near the trailer park off 4th. I saw 2 guys carrying a dog crate inside a shack. The roar that went up from the pack when I gave the signal was enough to wake the dead. We didn't use sirens. We didn't need M. The sound of 50 engines at full throttle is its own kind of warning. We hit that trailer park like a hurricane. We didn't just pull up, we surrounded the place. I parked my bike 3 inches from their front door. The headlights of 50 bikes illuminated that raggedy little shack until it looked like it was under a spotlight. The silence that followed when we killed the engines was the scariest part. It was that thick, suffocating silence that happens right before the lightning strikes. I didn't wait. I didn't knock. I kicked that door so hard the hinges didn't just break, they shrapnelled into the room. The 2 punks were sitting on a greasy sofa, counting a pile of crumpled 20s. They looked up, and I watched the blood drain from their faces so fast, I thought they'd pass out. They saw me. Then they saw the wall of leather standing behind me in the doorway. They saw the Motor Mafia patches, and they realized they hadn't just stolen a dog. They'd stolen from the king. "Where is she?" I asked. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. The skinny one tried to point toward a closet. We were just gonna sell her. We didn't hurt her. I walked over to that closet and ripped the door open. There she was. Bess was curled in the corner of a rusted wire crate, her fur matted with sweat and fear. When she saw me, she didn't bark. She let out this tiny, broken whimper that made my vision go red around the edges. I reached in, snapped the lock with my bare hands, and pulled her out. She was shaking so hard, I thought her little bones might snap. She buried her head in my vest, her tiny heart hammering against my chest like a trapped bird. I handed her back to Hammer. "Take her to the truck. Get her some water. And don't let her see what's about to happen." I turned back to the 2 punks. They were crying now, snot and tears running down their faces as they begged for mercy. They were talking about how they didn't know, how they were sorry, how they'd never do it again. "You're right," I said, stepping closer until I was standing over them like a mountain of bad news. "You won't ever do it again, because you're about to learn what happens When you touch the only thing an old man has left in this world. If you're glad Bess is back in safe hands, hit that like button. But don't think for a second we're done. The Biker King is waiting on Miller Street, and he's got a debt that needs to be paid in full. Subscribe and ring the bell, because part 3 is where the real justice begins. You want to see how we handle these two? Stay tuned. We didn't just throw M in the back of a truck and call it a day. That's too clean. When you steal a piece of a man's soul, you don't get off with a few bruises and a lecture. You have to feel the weight of what you tried to break. I made walk. We didn't let M ride in their silver sedan. We made M walk the 3 miles back to Miller Street, with the bikes idling at a crawl right behind him. Every time they slowed down, Biggs would give his throttle a twist, a sharp, metallic crack that reminded M that the road was long and we were very, very patient. When we finally turned onto Arthur's block, the neighbors were all out on their porches. Word travels fast in a place like this. They saw the 2 punks, heads hanging, covered in the dust of the road. And then they saw me, leading the pack, with Bess tucked into the front of my leather vest, her little head peeking out, watching the world go by with ears perked up. Arthur was still on his steps. He hadn't moved. He looked like he was carved out of stone. But when the first headlight hit his garden, he stood up. His hands were gripping the railing so hard, I thought the wood might splinter. I hopped off my bike before it even stopped moving. I didn't say a word. I just walked up those steps, unzipped my vest, and handed that little bundle of fur to him. The sound Arthur made. I'll carry it to my grave. It was a sob that came from the very bottom of his lungs, a sound of pure, unbredited relief. Bess didn't just wag her tail. Her whole body was vibrating as she licked the tears right off his wrinkled face. Arthur collapsed back onto the bench, burying his face in her neck, whispering, "You're home, girl. You're home." I let him have their moment. Then I turned around. The 2 punks were standing in the middle of the street, shivering under the glare of 50 sets of high beams. "On your knees," I barked. They hit the pavement fast. I looked at Arthur. "What do you want to do with M. King? You want M gone? Or you want M to learn?" Arthur looked at the 2 boys. He looked at their expensive sneakers and their hollow eyes. Then he looked at his garden, the roses they'd trampled when they pushed him down. He stood up, clutching Bess to his chest. "I don't want in a cage," Arthur said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "A cage just makes a dog meaner. I want em to fix what they broke. And I want him to see what it's like to care for something." So, that's exactly what we did. For the next month, those 2 punks were under Motor Mafia supervision. They didn't go back to their trailer. They lived in a tent in Arthur's backyard. Every single morning at 50 a.m., Hammer would wake em up with a bucket of cold water. They spent their days on their hands and knees, replanting every single rose bush they'd crushed. They scrubbed the oil stains off Arthur's driveway with toothbrushes. They painted his house, fixed his sagging porch, and mowed every lawn on the block for free. And the rule was simple: Bess had to be with them the whole time. They had to feed her. They had to brush her. They had to walk her, with Biggs following 6 feet behind him on his bike, just to make sure they didn't get any bright ideas. By the end of that month, those kids weren't the same. The sneer was gone. The arrogance was replaced by a deep, vibrating fear of ever disappointing a man in a leather vest again. But more than that, they'd seen something they didn't have in their own lives. They saw a community that looked out for its own. They saw that a dog wasn't just merchandise. It was a heartbeat. The day we finally let go, I saw the skinny one pet Bess on the head before he left. He didn't do it because we told him to. He did it because he finally understood. I sat on the porch with Arthur that last evening. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and bruised purple. Arthur was sipping a cold beer, and Bess was sprawled out across my boots, snoring like a little freight train. "You did good, Jax," Arthur said, looking out at his pristine garden. "Bill always said the loudest pipes don't mean a thing if the heart ain't tuned right. You've got a good tune, son." I didn't say anything. I just watched the road. Out here, people see the patches and the bikes, and they think we're the ones to be afraid of. And if you're a coward who steals from an old man, you're right. But if you're a man like Arthur, or a dog like Bess, we're the best friends you'll ever have. Respect isn't just a word we stitch on a vest. It's the way we live. It's the way we ride. And as long as the Motor Mafia is on the road, nobody on Miller Street, human or hound, is ever gonna walk alone. If this story reminded you why we protect the ones we love, hit that like button one last time. Share this video to remind the world that some things are sacred. Hug your pets, check on your neighbors, and always stand up for the king. This is Jax, signing off.